This is the Seahawkers Podcast, episode 342. I'm Brandon Schultz of the Military Seahawkers, and joining me, my good buddy and Montana Seahawker, Adam Emmert.
Hey, Matt, this is going to be fun today. This is one of my favorite podcasts of every single year, our season's expectations show. And I think this is a year that I think lends itself to fascinating conversation about this team. And I'm really excited to hear some of your thoughts. And I've been thinking about this a lot the last week. I've been driving back and forth all over Hell's Half Acre for work and had a lot of time in the car to think. And I don't know if that's good or bad. I mean, the windows in my car might have looked like a beautiful mind with like scribbles all over the windows.
Yeah, if you can picture that, just all the different thoughts and trying to draw what little bit of knowledge we've gained through the off season and trying to make any kind of prediction of what might actually happen. And not just a prediction, but our expectations. And this is an annual tradition.
Absolutely. And it's going to be, like I said, a very fascinating conversation overall.
Well, we will get there. We have some news to talk about. The Seahawks finished their second preseason game, their first game at home with fans since, all the way back to 2019. And it was cool seeing people there at the game, but not so cool seeing the play on the field where the Seahawks, they score a field goal and get crushed 30-3 by the dang Denver Broncos.
Yeah, I had to hear about that from our Bronco friend, Jared. And he honestly was like, who's Magoo? Like, who's this guy? And I was like, yeah, he's the practice squad wonder, watching the little bit that I did. The idea of all of our backups and third stringers, fourth stringers playing against a lot of the Broncos starters, that was tough to watch, or even potential starters. I mean, whether it was Bridgewater or Locke in there, either one of those guys is a monstrous upgrade over, Alex Magoo or Mannion.
Yeah.
I mean, geez.
Well, and Magoo not even on the team anymore. So he was cut after his 3 turnover performance. Pete Carroll not impressed. Don't tell me preseason doesn't matter. It matters to Pete Carroll if you turn the ball over 3 times over the course of about 2 quarters.
Yep. What is it? Rule number 1 is it's all about the ball.
It's at least number 1. It might be higher.
It might be higher. And you turn the ball over a few times and Pete is going to have a hissy fit. Alex Magoo is not Russell Wilson, so he is gone. You saw what happened last year when Russ threw a few picks. Pete threw a hissy fit, and it definitely changed the second half of the year. So, yeah, not one of those surprising decisions that was made by the coaching staff to let go of Magoo. It was painfully predictable.
And unfortunately, the CL collector came this week in the game. 2 players injured, John Ursua, Ben Burke-Irvin, both lost to, I believe, ACL injuries. You never like to see the guys lose their CLs.
Nope. You want to keep the CLs, and that's definitely tough for those 2 guys in particular. I mean, bubble guys for sure, and super unfortunate for both of them. I think Burke-Irvin, that was like the opening kickoff, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, what a bummer that is. And, we all had high hopes for Ursua. I mean, some of us more than others. Clinton Bonner.
He had one of his best games too against the Broncos. He led the team in yards and had 3 catches, and he looked like a serviceable wide receiver, and then he goes down.
Just terrible news for those 2 guys, especially. I mean, just the worst timing to go with it too. And my heart's hurts for both those guys, and I hope they both have a speedy recovery.
Yeah, that's a bummer. And Burke-Irvin too, I suppose. I mean, he had gotten so many opportunities. You saw him getting a lot of work back there, and then you end up having Nick Bellore filling in his spot because they didn't expect it to need so much depth in the linebacking group in the preseason. So it was cool though, because Nick Bellore actually looked pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, for reals. And he can also do the fullback thing, and he's also a key member to special teams. I mean, lets you know that Nick Bellore has exceptional value for the Seahawks. And then you combine that with being maybe the funniest guy on the team. Right. And you've got a keeper right there.
Yes, triple threat Nick Bellore. He is all over the place. And yeah, you know what? This offseason has gone a long way to endear me to that multi-tool player for the Seahawks.
No doubt about it. Speaking of a guy who's a multi-tool, we did sign Luke Wilson for a second.
Yeah.
No, he's not a multi-tool. He's just a goofball, man.
I know. They signed him for a second, and really they needed some depth at tight end because Domwood Anderson was a disaster once again and had, I don't know how many penalties in this game. He had a face mask penalty while the Seahawks were on offense, which when do you ever see that? He's hurt the team in terms of their ability to score points. I mean, he was a guy that you weren't expecting to make the team anyway, but then when they bring in Luke Wilson, there's kind of, some excitement there, especially with some folks who are into the Techno Thursday. I know there wasn't any excitement on your end necessarily, but there was a little bit of excitement because, he's had a history with the team. And then, yes, just less than 2 days after that announcement, he is retired.
Was that one of those deals where they just brought him in so he could retire as a Seahawk? Was that the plan all along, or was this a surprise?
No, this was a surprise because usually those sign and then retire deals. Well, for one, wasn't he with the team last year? So it's not like he needed to come back to the Seahawks to actually retire for one day. Because that was my thinking too. It just happened so quickly. But he did put out a statement. He said, after signing with the Seahawks yesterday, I have decided to walk away from the game of football. This offseason, I went through some health issues and spent numerous days in the hospital with a severe pericardial effusion, whatever that is. That situation has really challenged me as an individual and changed my perspective on a lot of things with regards to my life. After reflecting on everything yesterday and being in the building, I have decided that it's time for me to begin with the next chapter of my life. And then he went on to say thank you to everybody. But yeah, that was kind of the reasoning there in that first bit.
Sounds like that might be a heart issue. I mean, I'm not a doctor or anything, but I've watched enough pharmaceutical company commercials to know like a lot of the lingo, and that feels like a heart thing.
Pericardial effusion. It's probably something fancy for something that's really not that big of a deal. Oh no, it's a big deal. It's a buildup of extra fluid in the space around the heart. Yeah, so there you go.
Gosh, I am a genius. I absolutely. Look at that. I could be the team doctor too. But that's sad. I mean, you don't want somebody like that to be dealing with heart issues, man. Like that's no good. I think though that if he would have worn longer shorts on a regular basis, he probably could have avoided all that. We all know that excessive man thigh showing is the third leading cause of pericardial effusion, right?
Yeah, you pronounced it perfectly. And yes, that's probably,
science.
2 out of 10 doctors would probably agree of your assessment.
Yeah, that's 2 more than I would have guessed.
Half of statistics are all made up anyway.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, 50% of them are misleading. No doubt.
Well, we are wishing Luke all the best. And yeah, now they just have to figure out their issues at tight end. But they have some starters.
It will be fine. And look, you can find a tight end on the street. Like that is doable. They can find another guy to come in and be the 3rd or 4th tight end on the roster. It's not a big deal. I mean, as long as you got Everett and Disley, you're going to be in good shape. Now, Disley's injury history is a little alarming, but I still think that he's due for a bounce back here.
We forget that he was healthy the entire last year. It was just the injury history before that you have to concern yourself with. So they have their starting guys, and it's not like you're leaning on them for pass catching ability. At least you hope not.
Oh, they're leaning on Everett a little bit.
Well, that would be expected. But I don't think you were going to be leaning on Luke Wilson to catch more than 6 or 7 passes this year.
Captain Stonehands? No.
We got news this week that the Seahawks traded for more competition at the cornerback spot. They give up a conditional 7th round pick for John Reed of the Texans, and they cut Pierre Desir, and Trey Brown is injured too. So there's some depth issues there. Listening to Pete Carroll, he kind of he praised Trey Flowers more than he did Akella Witherspoon. So put whatever weight into that you want. And DJ Reed's coming back, so that's positive. But yeah, I don't think we have a clear sense of who is going to be opposite of DJ Reed right now.
It's going to be Reed and Reed. Dude, future Hall of Famer. What was his name? Was it John Reed?
John
what
Reed.
Was his name?
Yeah.
Yeah, John Reed. Yeah, so you screwed up his name right when you introduced him. I mean, the way that they trade for these guys off of other teams that are like low-hanging fruit and turn them into serviceable starters. I mean, this is clearly future Hall of Famer John Reed.
Yeah, there we go. I don't know much about him, but I hope he does well.
Look, I do know one thing for a fact. Every time the Seahawks have brought in a former DB from another team named Reed, it's been a success.
So they're 1 for 1.
Yeah.
Why would you ruin a perfect record?
Because you have confidence in your Reed picking ability.
No, that's a good point.
Yeah. Are there any other Reeds out there that are available in the secondary? Because we could probably use all the secondary Reeds we can get.
Do you think that's, I suppose Ed Reed, he might be available to come back.
I mean, he could do a Dion, right? Like come back when he's really old and still be decent.
Yeah, he's already a Hall of Famer. Just, why not?
Yeah. I feel like there's a safety or two out there. What was the former 49ers safety? Wasn't he a Reed? The guy who went to Carolina for a minute?
Yeah, that guy.
That guy. Yeah.
There's all kind of Reeds out there.
Sure.
Hey, if they're so high on these Reeds, then why did they give up Jaron Reed?
You know why.
Okay.
Because he wanted too much damn money.
Another cornerback that Pete was talking about, Demerius Randall. We might get to see him some more in this game, and maybe we'll get into it more with our expectations, because the cornerbacks, it's an area that I'm worried about.
Yeah, you think? Just the overall depth of the team is worrisome. This is really weird to watch the Seahawks, even their backups, get pushed around and manhandled. And I mean, holy cow, especially in the trenches, dude, nothing was happening there. I mean, we were just getting smoked. And that to me was almost terrifying.
And when you have a guy like Geno Atkins come in and visit after that, and you're going, okay, this is what they're doing to shore up this spot. And then he leaves without signing a deal. Pete did say that there are some medical issues that were going on with him that I guess they had to get checked out. And so maybe that was some of the reasoning why they didn't sign him right away. But I think they need Geno Atkins on this team.
And Geno didn't want to practice before week 1.
There's a lot of guys like that. You got Geno, yeah. Dwayne Brown still sitting out, Quandre Diggs sitting out, Pete Carroll saying they're quote unquote making a statement about their contract.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's one of his favorite phrases, isn't it?
They're making a statement.
Oh yeah. Well, they're making a statement.
They're competing. I mean, it's part of it's just part of the competition.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Instead of being like, yeah, man, we need to figure that out.
Yeah, they do. It's coming down to the wire now.
Yeah. And they will, they will. You're not going to go into this year without Dwayne Brown as your starting left tackle. And you're not going to go into the season without Diggs as your starting free safety. You're not doing it.
I think there's that component of it, but I think there's also the component of, I don't think that those guys take that pay hit of sitting out either. Although I guess Dwayne did it before, so there is some of that concern.
Yeah, and especially when you're Dwayne's age, right? I mean, I don't need this catfish. I can sit out for a year. That's fine.
Yeah,
or he's made his money.
Yeah,
yeah.
Although if you're asking for more money long term, giving it up in the short term, I don't know. It seems like a lot, but I feel like there's a way that both sides can ultimately work it out before the season starts.
I don't agree with that. I think there's a certainty that this is going to get worked out before the beginning of the season. And part of that, when I say that, is just what you were saying, sitting out, not getting checks. Like, I don't think Diggs is doing that. It could happen with Brown, but they're going to pay Brown. Russell Wilson put the entire franchise on notice that he was like, dude, either you're all in on me or you're not. And if you start the season without Dwayne Brown at left tackle, what kind of message does that send to Russ?
Right.
There's no way that happens. None.
Yeah, that is the reason why you expect it to get done. And it's not like Brown is going to be practicing anyway. So now you have the couple weeks after this preseason game is over, before the first game. You can square all this contract stuff away. And that's when you get it settled. And that's when you bring in Geno Atkins and This is an ideal time to do that. It's also an ideal time to figure out who is freaking starting at center, because it was, I think a few people were freaked out because there was a tweet that was put out. It said, "Position battle update. It was becoming apparent that Kyle Fuller was going to win the starting job at center, and Pete Carroll stopped just short of declaring that today. Incumbent starter Ethan Posick, hamstring, missed much of camp, but Carroll made it clear Fuller earned the job." And I went back and I watched this press conference from Friday, and it was not clear to me that Pete Carroll was naming Kyle Fuller as the starter. And thank goodness, because this was the concern to me, is what we've seen from Kyle Fuller. We have not seen a guy who I'm ready to name as a starting center.
Oh, hell no. Absolutely not. No way. Not in a million years. It is so frustrating to watch this team so often undervalue the center position. Like, it drives me nuts. I mean, talking to our Broncos friend Jared after this preseason game, I was just like, I'm so frustrated about center. Like, he's like, yeah, it's the most important position on the offensive line. I don't care what people say about left tackle. And I don't quite agree with that, but it's right up there. And whether it was getting rid of Max Unger to bring in Jimmy Graham, or eventually walking away from Britt, all that stuff. It's so frustrating. Like, or not pouncing on Rodney Hudson when he was available. Just things like that. That position is a high position of value. And I know I said that about safety last week, and nobody really pushed back on it. So I'm going to guess everybody agrees that I'm right, that safety is one that the national media doesn't think is a big deal, but it's a big catfish deal. And center is one of the offensive versions of that. Posick better get healthy in a hurry, because Fuller's a dumpster fire.
Yeah, he was back in practice this week, and I feel like it was Pete sending a message to Posick, like, you need to get out there and show us something in this preseason game or in the week leading up to it, because I need a reason why to name you as the starter over Fuller at this point. And I do think that naturally it comes down to that. And I don't know the injury situation with Posick, because I feel like he's had these kind of nagging injuries here and there. So he's not a guy that you can necessarily count on. And that's a big concern for me. But I also don't see anything in the competition that leads me to believe that there is somebody nipping at his heels. And I don't think it's Kyle Fuller.
Do you think that Pete was sending that message because he's frustrated with Posick and his quote injuries? Like, how has he talked about Posick's injury? Is it a legit hamstring? Like, what level?
No, he is not assigned legit to the hamstring issue. That's what it comes across to me as Pete saying, you gotta get out there and show us something, because it's I need to know that we can count on you once we get to the season to play through these types of things. And if it is legit, then fine. But
maybe Pete doesn't think it's legit. Maybe he thinks that Posick just doesn't want to go through the preseason stuff and all of the offseason workouts and all.
Or maybe he's just acting as though he's got the job locked up and he wants to send that message of competition.
Maybe. It's hard telling.
Well, it is hard telling, because based on some of the centers that Pete's put out there to start for the Seahawks, random years, Lemuel Jean-Pierre, and you have the other dude that was before him that was a disaster for almost an entire first half of the season.
Yeah, that guy. And Joey Hunt for half a year in there. Yeah, it's a little scary.
I almost expected him to say that Lundblade, who had been the third string guy, was in the competition, because I saw more from him in the preseason than I did from Fuller, I feel like.
That's possible, I suppose. It's funny, though. I mean, we definitely can tell that our show is not driven by the ratings situations that most shows are driven by. We just spent, 15 minutes talking about center and backup center and passionately. There you go, folks. That's for you.
That's what you came here for, the center passion.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like we've gotten into some of the areas that we're concerned about. I'm going to go to Michael Paul, because he posted a comment in the Ring of Honor, and I think this is kind of what we've been getting at in terms of depth-wise. He says, so I haven't watched either game yet. I usually don't get too interested in the preseason, but from the articles I've read, the stats I've seen, and the commentary I've heard, here's what I know about the upcoming season. If we have to play an entire game with nothing but deep backups, we are catfish. If we have to play any games without Russell Wilson or injured Russell Wilson, we're especially catfish. So there you go. There's Michael Paul's assessment.
Look, and he is dead nuts right, but it's also the same situation that every team faces.
Sure.
Every single team in the league. If you have to play with mostly backups and or your backup quarterback, you're screwed.
And even if you don't have a backup quarterback, we watched in the Super Bowl what happens when you're playing with offensive lineman backups in the Super Bowl, and Mahomes just had no opportunity to be the guy that we usually see.
Exactly. So,
although he did throw some amazing incompletions when he's, leaving his feet and horizontal with the ground, like those were some of the most amazing incompletions I've ever seen. But yeah, it made him look
human.
It made him look human.
That's just the thing. The depth part of it, we were spoiled with that early on in this regime of Seahawks football, right? It just felt like we had two dudes at almost every spot. And these last few years, it really hasn't felt that way. It feels like you either have top tier, top line talent or just a guy, that middle tier athlete, the KJ Wrights of the world. And I mean, that's unfair to call him a middle tier player because he's much better than that. He's a very freaking good football player, but he's never looked at as a star, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's those types of guys that they're glue guys, and you've seen them, leave the team and not really replaced, whether that's through the draft or free agency. And, let me ask you this, with Burke Irvin going down in the linebacking core, I mean, does that open the door for KJ?
I don't know. I really don't think that that's the guy. I feel like the guy that they're leaning on, and one of the reasons why we see so much of him in the preseason, is Jordan Brooks. Like that's the only guy that's seen a considerable amount of snaps who's been a starter. And it's the only reason that I can think why is they're telling him, you need to go out and show us because we love KJ Wright and we can bring him back any moment. So we need to see you give us everything you have in the preseason. I don't, mm-hmm. How else do you explain Jordan Brooks being out there as like the only guy who had starting snaps last year?
Experience. They just want to get him more experience and put him in some different situations that maybe they're not going to ask him to be in games, but to see if that's, there's things that he can do that maybe they weren't super confident that he could do, but had seen flashes in practice, whatever it is, right? A young player, just trying to get him some experience. I think that's the big part of that. But yeah, that was kind of frustrating to watch. I mean, just Jordan Brooks and then no other starters. So you go through this preseason and you don't have any sort of feel for what this team is or what they're going to do in terms of, scheme and that sort of stuff.
We saw some tempo. We did see the offense move at a nice clip down the field, get in a rhythm, but that's not completely new. That's something that we've seen in preseasons past too. Is that going to be a consistent part of the offense? That's something that you don't know.
It better catfish can be. I will tell you that. I am so sick of that slow ass stuff that we were running with Shoddy. We spent the whole last season complaining about that. And I am very excited about the idea of playing with a little bit of rhythm.
Well, the frustrating part was watching that rhythm work so well as they get into a nice passing rhythm. And then they get to where they're getting close to the red zone and they hand it off 3 straight times to Rashad Penny and it kills the drive. And it was frustrating.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they're working out a lot of those kinks, those philosophical kinks, I'm sure, here through the preseason and kind of throwing stuff at the wall, see what sticks. I have a feeling that there'll be a more cohesive offensive plan going into the season. I guess it's probably time to get into our expectations about the season, right? Like, I feel like we're kind of beating around the bush about it.
We have been a little bit, but I think we're also expressing some of our frustrations through what we've seen in the preseason that could lead toward our expectations for this year.
Yeah. I mean, this is part of what I wanted to talk about. This is why I think this conversation is fascinating. because Jared had asked me, it was the first time I talked to him in a few months, we're both busy. And, well, what's going on with the Hawks this year? What's going to happen? And I'll tell you what, every year that we've done this podcast and we've done this show, I've had like a pretty solid feeling about where this team is, how it stacks up to the rest of the division and or their conference, what their shots are to go to the Super Bowl, that sort of thing. And I think we've been pretty accurate in our predictions.
Yeah,
right?
We've been within a game or two every single year, I feel like.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. And so kind of kudos to us in that. I just pat ourselves on the back there a little bit. But this is a year when you could tell me that the Seattle Seahawks could go 14-3 or 3-14, and it's believable.
Yeah, they're not going 3-14.
No, but it's really that wild of a swing for me because of a bunch of different variables, and a few of them are this: new offensive coordinator. What's that going to look like?
Yeah.
I don't feel like they did enough in the trenches. Like, I really don't. That was something that we've been calling for years. I want to dominate in the freaking trenches. That's where football games are won and lost, not on the perimeter. And somehow, some way, we don't seem to spend in that area the way that we should. And it's maddening. Then you take last year into account. Most seasons of Seahawks football going in, you watch the previous season going into the next season, you're like, oh, this is what this team is right now. This is what they're building. Here's, areas of strength and weaknesses, and this is what you can hang your hat on. And I know the rest of the division's like this, and you can kind of come up with your prediction. Well, you look at last season, and the most Jekyll and Hyde season I have ever seen a football team play. And which defense do we get? Do we get first half of the year defense or second half of the year defense? Same with the offense. If we get second half of the year offense, we're catfish. I don't care if it's Russ back there or Magoo. It doesn't matter. They might bring Magoo back off the street if they're going to play that way. Like, it was so bad at times, and it was so good at times. And I don't know which version of this team that we have. And I don't know how to tease that out either.
Well, you can't. Really you can't tease it out from preseason.
No,
and you can't tease it out from anything that you've necessarily learned from the offseason, because what are the moves that we've seen from last season? It's been relatively status quo on the offensive line, which apart from adding Gabe Jackson, which I do think it gives you more physicality in terms of guys on the interior of the offensive line. I think that's a plus move. But not addressing center, that was an area where I didn't want to see him go status quo. And the fact that Pete has to hype this up as a battle between Fuller and Posick, that's where I get a little bit concerned and frustrated, because that's not a battle. I was hoping that Posick would come in and just be the guy, and then that's settled. But if you're telling me that there's a battle there, based off of what we've seen performance-wise, Fuller going up against backups of other teams, yeah, not excited.
No, not excited.
And that's why we spent so much time on center. So we can go beyond that.
Yeah. I wanted to touch on the Gabe Jackson thing, because I do think that was a nice upgrade for them. No doubt about it. Now,
the
what
other
that
part
does
of that is moving Damian Lewis to the other side, though.
Thank you. That's exactly where I was going.
Okay.
You read my mind. What does that do to Damian Lewis, moving him to the other side? He had a very successful rookie season. Is he able to parlay that into that kind of second year leap, or is he now back to being closer to a rookie, right? Doing a position change. Mm-hmm. How does that affect him? You're hoping that it affects him well, and getting to play against Dwayne or next to Dwayne Brown should help.
Sure.
As well. But
I think the way if you want to be optimistic about it, you say, well, the dude came in and he played center for one game and he looked not too bad doing it. So
true. If
he can move center, what's one more spot over? And maybe he's just this versatile dude.
If you were to ask me, put a gun to my head and be like, okay, bullish or not bullish on Damian Lewis in his move to left guard? Definitely bullish. And then really, I guess what it all boils down to, I think the offense will not end up in a quagmire like they did last year. I don't think that's really possible. to see that happen again with this offensive system and Russ being in a position where he's just, if Pete looks at him after throwing a couple picks and like tries to take the ball out of his hands again, like he did the second half of last year, Russ isn't going to have that this year. There's no possible way. And I guarantee you that was hashed out this offseason. I think they're on the same page when it comes to that sort of thing now.
I hope so. The question I have is where that pinch point was in the relationship. I've said this so many times. I'll go back to it, though, that Pete saw what was going wrong with the offense, and he had to tell Brian Schottenheimer that this is going wrong and this is what I want you to do differently. And if that wasn't happening, and that's what led to Schotty being fired, the good thing is you have an offensive coordinator then who is going to, well, I hope he's going to listen to the head coach because that's your boss. But at the same time, if Russ has different ideas, then that's something that would have needed to been worked out with Pete in the offseason. If that happened, then there's more of an understanding here of how things are operating with the coordinator then.
I get where you're coming from. And
I might not be articulating it exactly how I'm working through it in my head, but yeah.
No, I'm picking up what you're putting down, and the idea of, okay, what was the pinch point there, and how did everything go the way that it did that second half of the year? Like why and how, right? And I think a big part of that, well, let me put it to you this way. Do you think that the offense would have been closer to what we saw the first 6 games of the year going down the stretch if they would have just ridden out the way that they had been playing? Like if they didn't make that big shift in getting real conservative on offense? Because I think that it would have. I think you would have had that funk that Russ was in there for a minute, but I think they would have worked through it, and I think the offense would have looked a lot better going down the stretch. Now, with that said, I understand why Pete did what he did, because playing that way with the defensive personnel that he had that year and the way that the defense had been playing, they were going to get smoked playing that way. You couldn't possibly win the division and get into the playoffs if they had continued down that path. They needed to protect the defense a little bit to try to bring them.
I don't know if they needed to protect the defense, but I don't think that Pete Carroll wanted to have the historically worst defense in NFL ever.
Yes, absolutely. I think,
and so I think it was a pride situation for Pete in that case.
Yes, there's definitely a part of that. Like when he comes out and he's like, I don't even recognize us as a team. You could tell that this was tearing him up as a coach. While his decision to change things up that second half of the year did result in wins for the most part and a division title and a playoff appearance, you weren't going anywhere playing football that way. There was no possible way with that team, with that personnel, with Russ looking as deflated and broken as ever, right? So I understand why Pete did that, but I think it ultimately was the wrong decision. Now, that kind of brings me to my expectations about the defense, right? Like for the offense, it's like, I think they're going to be pretty good. I think we're going to have a couple game slump here and there as they work through this stuff, but I think they're going to keep their foot on the pedal, right? Mm-hmm. And really go for it and actually try to outscore people. So that leads us to the defense. If you're not protecting the defense by playing slower and running the ball a little bit more and doing all of that and playing field position, is this defense that bad defense from the first half of the year? I don't know. Because last year we banked on the idea that a great secondary made for a good pass rush, right? Yeah, great coverage in the back end, and that would help the pass rushers get home. That's what we bet on.
Yeah.
I think we found out in that chicken and the egg kind of argument that it's the opposite way around. Pass rushers make for a good secondary. I think you can have guys that are closer to just a guy if you have a good pass rush. And so that's what they're banking on this year, right? We have all these edge rushers and they're all pretty good. We don't have that star, but they're all pretty good.
Pretty good.
So you're kind of betting on the volume of that. I think what the big problem is for the defense for me is that there isn't that girth up front in the middle of the defensive line to stop us from getting jellied every freaking game where they run the ball down our throat. And right now, that feels like the biggest weakness on this defense to me personally, more so than corner.
It's the concern, especially after watching the first couple preseason games, is that you don't have the depth there. I think that between Poona Ford and Al Woods, you have a pretty good starting two for that run defense. But if you're relying on Monet giving you snaps, if you're relying on any of the other depth guys on the interior, it's not there. And yeah, the Raiders showed you and the Broncos that if this is what you're putting out there, we're going right at the middle of you and you aren't going to be able to stop us. And that was the case with the backup players. Now with Bobby Wagner back in there, with Jordan Brooks, that could change that somewhat. And
okay. And that's where I feel like the Seahawks are banking. They're banking on, this is another one of those chicken and an egg kind of debates, right?
Yeah.
What they're banking on is that great linebacker play and great safety play can make up for a so-so defensive tackle position in the interior of your defensive line.
Yeah.
And that's possible.
It is, as long as you're not allowing those second level guys to take on those linebackers and safeties one-on-one.
Yep.
Because when you see that in the preseason, those dudes get blown up.
And don't get me wrong. I mean, Wags is one of the, if not the best in the league at sifting through traffic and making stops. I mean, he's 1A, right? He's amazing. And he's one of the stars on your team. He's one of the highest paid guys on the team. So I can understand why you're banking on him. Same with Adams. You just gave him that monster deal. I mean, you're going to bank on that guy. And he is a box safety. That's what he's there for, is for run support. So it feels like to me, like, yeah, bring in the Geno Atkins or the corpse of Geno Atkins, whatever it is, right? Like him and maybe two other older guys that are still sitting at home. They need that. It's important. And they don't even have to be big time players. They just need to be some big, fat dudes that get in the way of the defensive line and are just too big to really move around. Just stand up the other guy, the offensive lineman, and then let Wags and Brooks and Adams and Diggs sift through the trash and make stops.
Yeah. Well, and I mentioned Al Woods, and that's, if you have the Al Woods from a couple years ago, then great. But he's a guy who sat out last year, and now he's coming back. Is he going to be able to be that same guy from a couple years ago? It's a big question.
Hard telling, not knowing. Yeah, I mean, you're banking on it, and then you let Jaron Reed go, and it's this is the type of stuff that makes me a little crazy with this team. I mean, I've been mad about it for however many years now. I really wish they would build through the trenches. Yeah. I just do, and they don't seem to want to do that. Like explosives and covering up explosives is like an obsession for Pete.
They made the shift, though. I do think, and I think we're even seeing it play out in Jacksonville, that moving on from Shaquille Griffin was the right move, because it's not like he's going out there and he's being a Pro Bowl, all pro type guy down in Jacksonville. They made the right move there, but then to also lose Reed, where, man, that seems like an obvious shift in your investment is, okay, you don't pay your corner $15 million a year. You pay Dunlap. You continue to pay Reed. Poona Ford, you give a nice little chunk extra to. Well, shoot, they saved money on Dunlap compared to last year. So, yeah, they could have kept all those guys.
They could have. I still agree with the decision to let Shaq sign that big deal.
I mean all three of the guys, meaning Reed, Jaron Reed, Poona Ford, and Dunlap. They could have handled that salary-wise.
Yeah. I just, at the end of the day, Reed's inconsistency makes it impossible for me to pay him big money. You can get that for cheaper. You absolutely can.
Well, they didn't have to get rid of Reed, though. They wanted him to take a pay cut. He wouldn't do it. And so they released him. If they would have paid him at what he was scheduled to make this year, he wouldn't be gone.
Yeah, but if you don't do that, maybe you don't bring Chris Carson back.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like that money goes other places. It doesn't, it doesn't have to go right to that same position.
But they didn't restructure Bobby. They didn't restructure Russ. You have
that's
those
your
options.
ace in the hole. To still bring in like a guy who's sitting out there, maybe KJ. Maybe I mean, I'm still not writing Richard Sherman off yet.
No, I suppose not. Give him a couple weeks and see what the corners look like.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I mean, depending on where he's at right now with, his mental health and everything, if he's doing better and things look good, then.
Well, and we still have to wait for a veteran cut down day from other teams as they try and get down to 53.
And then there's that. Yeah. I'd be surprised if there isn't more moves made on defensive line and corner before week 1. Future Hall of Famer John Reed is not the only DB they're going to bring in before week 1.
We could see that competition continue. Demerius Randall is another guy Pete was talking about, a veteran player who's played at safety, played some corner. I think he could play outside.
Sure, maybe.
Gosh, his hype for Trey Flowers, though, this week. Saying that he had one of the best preseasons that he's ever seen him have. Although I guess, if that's who you end up with is DJ Reed and Trey Flowers, it's like having Shaq and Trey Flowers out there a couple years ago, right?
Right. Yeah. I'm not sure that DJ Reed and Trey Flowers is necessarily a big downgrade from Shaq and DJ Reed, or even having Dunbar out there.
I think Dunbar's available, as it turns out.
I'm sure he is.
Because he got cut there recently by the Lions, right?
Yeah.
Man, hype around that guy didn't work out.
Surely didn't. Thanks, PFF.
Right.
I don't know, man. So as I sit and talk about like my expectations for the year, it depends on the minute when you talk to me. Like I was just talking to one of my neighbors just a few minutes ago and like, oh yeah, draft Tyler Lockett in your fantasy league. He's going to go off again this year. Russ is on an MVP mission. Waldy's going to have him running mesh concepts and boots and all sorts of cool stuff. And like, we're going to light the league on fire. Every game we're going to be in is going to be a Star Wars kind of game. And we're going to score a bunch of points and win our division because Stafford's going to get hurt. And you have 2 quarterbacks in San Francisco. So that means you got none. And then there's that other team. And so like, yeah, man, like Seahawks all the way. We're going, 13 and 4 and it's going to be great. Yeah. This is still screwing me up to 17 games.
Yeah,
I'm getting better at it, but
yeah, that other team that you mentioned, they just traded for a dude with knee issues who a lot like Todd Gurley's been dealing with knee issues. The Rams traded for Sony Michel with the Patriots and gave up a 5th and a 6th rounder that converts to a 4th rounder if the Rams get a 4th round compensatory pick.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
I had just learned today that they traded for Michel. I had no idea what they gave up for him. That's ridiculous.
You would think like a 6th or a 7th, right?
1. Yes.
Yeah.
1 6th, 1 7th. But a 5th or a 6th that may turn into a 4th?
Right. Yeah. That's
freaking insane.
Isn't it?
Oh my gosh. After they spent a 2nd on Henderson, right? Wasn't he a 2nd round pick?
Or was he a 3rd and Akers was a 2nd?
Either way.
Yeah. Both of those guys came out of the 2nd and 3rd rounds.
Sony Michel has done exactly jack and catfish since he's gotten into the league.
Michel and Penny are both right there for their limited amount of time in the NFL.
And limited amount of production.
Yeah, Henderson round 3.
Okay. That's a pretty dang high draft pick that on a running back. And he can't start for you right now after he's been in the league for 3 years. Like that's absurd.
You're going after a guy who has continuously not been able to make the field, and you're giving up picks for a guy like that? Well, why don't you just wait till he gets cut? And if you're that sold on him, you give him a deal then, or you find another guy.
Well, it'd be one thing if they hadn't gave up like 67 first-round picks in a row for Matt Stafford. You know what I mean? Like they've given up the top of their draft for the next, 2-3 years? And now you're giving up 2 picks in the next draft at the bottom end of the draft. Like, well, who are they going to pick next year? Yama? Like there's nobody, like they're going to have one pick.
Yeah. Oh, it's wild. Well, let's go back. I want to talk about, I'm not going to say we've been pessimistic, but we've been focusing on a lot of the questions where there are big questions going into the season. Where there's not questions is the talent level of these guys on offense. When you take Russell Wilson, when you bring back Chris Carson, one of the most underrated guys in the NFL at running back, you got DK Metcalf, you have Tyler Lockett. Those guys, you upgrade at tight end to Gerald Everett. You still have Will Dissly, who's coming off a full season and an actual offseason where he's able to prepare for the season.
Yeah, he was fighting grizzly bears this offseason.
Yeah.
Like getting ready for this year. Yeah.
Find me 6-7 guys on another offense that have that combined level of talent at the skill positions. And there's not many teams out there that have that combined level of talent on offense.
Not to mention, you take a high draft pick like Eskridge, who could be really exciting in the slot. That could be really fun in this sort of Ram style offense. And then, we sat and talked about the offensive line just a minute ago. And do I feel good about Damian Lewis? Hell yeah, I do. He's a heck of a player. Dwayne Brown's one of the best in the business. Gabe Jackson is a good starter. And Brandon Shell is a good starter. Like 4 out of your 5 offensive linemen are good players, if not great.
So going back to center, not every guy can be awesome.
Not every guy can be awesome. And so, yeah, you look at that with the perimeter guys, and there's a lot of reason to get excited. And not only that, the idea, hey, okay, Penny's healthy again. He's your RB2. Alex Collins has looked great in the practices leading up to preseason and all that. DJ Dallas is showing a little bit of pop in the preseason.
He's blocking punts. He's running back kickoffs, looking good.
Yeah,
so
you think the return game's going to have a boost with some of these guys that can, whether it's Eskridge or Freddie Swain or whoever it is they're going to throw back there. Yeah, let us not forget about Freddie Swain as a receiver as well. What a great third or fourth option.
Yeah, in my mind, he's number 3 just because we haven't seen a lot from Eskridge and he's going into his second year. I think he is the number 3.
Yeah, and I like more Swain, please. Like I like Freddie Swain a lot, but this is where viewing football through a fantasy football kind of lens is so dangerous. Like all of us fans, we get so excited about all the dudes on the perimeter and all the skill position guys, and just never really look at where games are ultimately won and lost, down in the trenches. And so, yeah, I mean, the star power is insane on offense. Does that end up, equaling the amount of points that you think that you should get because Russell Wilson is under duress, or you can't consistently, run the football when you need to, or, there's a million things that can happen there because you don't dominate in the trenches. I don't know. That's what's so crazy about this year. But I am optimistic, man. It's Russell freaking Wilson. Okay. And DK has gotten better every year that he's been in the league. Tyler just had the he's the all-time season leading in receptions receiver ever in Seahawks history from last year. Chris Carson, I mean, he's a monster. A better scheme, a little more up tempo. Don't get behind the chains. Maybe, clean up the penalties a little bit. Oh my gosh. Now we're cooking with gas, right?
Yeah. And if there are any concerns about Shane Waldron as a play caller, just know that all the times that we've seen Russell Wilson take over as play caller when his headset's gone out in his helmet, things have worked out well. So we just might have a lot of games where his headset's going out.
Yeah. If Waldy's having a hard time with that play calling thing, I would expect that, Bose might drop Russell as a sponsor because I'm sure it's a Bose speaker in his helmet because he's going to act like that catfish is broken every single series. Oh, I don't know. Can't hear you, Waldy. No.
Another thing I'm optimistic about, and it's something that Pete Carroll said in his Friday press conference, is pointing to the experience that Waldron has with the offensive linemen. And that's not something that Seattle's had with an offensive coordinator. And he was talking about the reason why he was talking about it. He was saying specifically that he wanted Shane on the sidelines because he wants that input, his direct input going to the offensive linemen when the offense comes off the field. I'm more optimistic that now they have a guy that understands those types of things a little bit better.
And knows how to coach him up a little bit more.
And knows how to call plays based off of that talent level.
Yeah, that variable of the game. Hey, are we doing well on the left side or the right side? I mean, is the running game going to be effective this week? Or, oh, geez, we thought we had a good matchup here and it's not going our way. Or, oh my gosh, I can't believe that Dwayne Brown has dominated, Khalil Mack, 5 possessions in a row. Like, let's just keep pounding it there.
Sure.
Like, hopefully has a better feel for that part of the game, right? And is able to adjust on the fly. I think that's going to be the biggest thing I'm looking for in Waldron. Is that was what was so frustrating about Shoddy or even Daryl Bevel. It's like the amount of time it took him to adjust what they were doing.
You don't have to wait until halftime to realize that something's not working and to change things.
Exactly.
Because that's the time of the game that the other team is also scouting themselves, saying, oh, well, they're going to do this because of what we're doing here. And then they can make their own adjustments.
Absolutely. So some quicker adjustments, quicker pace to the offense. I'm looking forward to that. And then let's not forget that Russ is pissed. He's pissed.
Yeah. He's pissed at how last year ended.
Still hasn't gotten a single MVP vote. And then he watched Brady get to pick a team, not just sign somewhere in free agency, but then pick the team, and do all that, and then win his 17th Super Bowl. You saw him seething in the booth. You saw him throw his fit this offseason. He wants to earn. He wants that respect this year that he feels like he is long overdue for. If he's not on the MVP warpath this year, I will be stunned.
We've talked about some of the areas of concern on defense, areas of optimism
on defense.
Yeah, you still got two Pro Bowl, legit Pro Bowl safeties.
Wags is all world
still.
I mean, yeah, you saw the Dunlap situation last year. That gives me some hope that with him being there for the entire season, it does unlock that pass rush and the defense does look totally different and more dominant. And not to mention Jamal Adams' health. Him being in the system for a second year and getting everything cleaned up and getting healthy, I think is going to be a big, big deal. And that's going to be exciting and a game changer.
Two young guys that are exciting on the defensive line that we saw a lot from in the preseason so far, Rasheem Green and Alton Robinson. The edges in the preseason, no matter who they were going up against, the edges looked good.
Yeah, I'm really stoked about Alton Robinson. He just looks the part. Everything. I don't know. I can't explain it or anything like that, but I think he's going to have a breakout year. Daryl Taylor is going to be a contributor. If he can ever figure out how to go from straight to turn towards the quarterback, he's going to be unstoppable.
He was working through some issues in the preseason this year, but
yeah,
I think you do have to chalk it up to being rust more than anything.
Oh yeah.
I hope. And it's not, but I hope it's rust, not bust.
He is explosive though.
Yeah.
I mean, he's so fast. I mean, he definitely was getting by guys. He just couldn't turn the corner.
We saw some tackling issues out in space.
He's a pass rusher. He's not a linebacker. He's an edge guy.
Yeah, they maybe used him more as linebacker, and that's where he was having some of the struggles.
Yeah, that's not a natural transition for him. I know they were doing it in training camp and all that, but that's fine. And we've also seen the Seahawks defense in years past struggle with tackling the first couple weeks of the year. And it makes sense. You can't hit anybody and you can't really practice it, but they always, always, always get that cleaned up. Always.
You have to think that with the improvements that just the fact that Dunlap's coming back the second half of season, where you didn't have a healthy Adams as much as you did early on when he was your pass rush, that freeing him up to do some of the other Jamal Adams things that he has the capability of doing, that has me excited about the defense.
And then you got guys they brought in like Kerry Hyder, right? I mean, that's an interesting signing. I mean, yeah, had a big year last year.
Yeah, depth piece. Yeah, that has the ability to do some nice things.
Exactly. And it's a real bummer. If the Alden Smith thing had worked out, I would be a little more fired up about the defense. That's for sure.
With him on the team, I had my questions on which one of the younger guys they were going to maybe have to move on from.
True.
And we haven't talked really about LJ Collier at all.
That's true.
And where he's going to be. Is he going to be more of an inside guy now that there's guys kind of at the edges?
Yeah.
I don't know. He's not a guy that jumped out a ton at me in the preseason either.
No, not at all. So his development will be, another one of those fun things to watch. But so I guess for me, my expectations are, I expect the offense to be a top 5 offense. And I'm hoping the defense will be like 14.
Yeah.
And if that's the case, then they've got a real shot to win it this year.
In that respect, it's very similar to last year, right? Where you had the high expectations on the offense and that you just are hoping for average on defense. And instead of average, we got absolutely terrible through the first half of the season. Yeah. And then we got average.
So I guess that kind of brings you to like, is this a Ken Norton issue? Like, are we like over under on how many games Ken Norton lasted DC this year?
I don't think it's a Ken Norton issue. Watching the preseason solidified to me that it's more of a personnel issue. They have not done as good of a job drafting and bringing in talent as they did 5 years ago.
No, definitely
and
not.
Maybe it's been longer than 5 years ago now.
Yeah.
9 years ago, 8-9 years ago.
I mean, kind of John's cooled off a little bit, man. I mean, he's had some tremendous hits. There's no doubt about it. But it's usually like one a draft and then a bunch of guys that can't play.
And he's made his hits in other places, like in free agency, like bringing in Diggs and bringing in Dunlap. Those are big hits.
Trading for Adams.
Yeah, the trade. Trading for Jamal.
Yeah.
That's helped where things haven't worked out with guys like Clowney and
It worked out with Clowney.
Yeah, it was okay.
We got our value out of him. I mean, he ended up getting hurt, but up until he got hurt, like what would you give up, a 6th?
Yeah, it was something like 5th. It was the compensation was not that great.
Right. And so sure, he didn't come back, but I mean, it's not like you gave up a 5th and a 6th for him and he's Sony Michel.
No, the biggest concerns for me were the depth issues of the guys that you had that expectation that they were going to replace the guys from the LOB era, and almost none of them worked out.
Yeah, that's very true. So I guess I say 12-5, and they're in it for the division title right down to the last week. They make the playoffs, and they have 2 playoff wins.
I'm in that range. After all the questions that we have about the team.
Right. Now you gotta
put a number to it.
Do you 3 leave or not?
Yeah. Yeah, I think, you know what? I'm trying to decide which side of 12 wins that I want to go on.
Sweet. That's why I went first. It made it a lot easier for me.
I'm going for it. 13-4, baby.
Okay. All right.
NFC title appearance.
What would be, in your mind, what's the minimum they have to do for this to be considered a successful year?
That they have to get by the divisional round this year.
I kind of feel the same way.
Because if they don't,
unless they like lose in the divisional round by getting like screwed, like the Saints got screwed a few years ago.
Yeah,
something like that.
But I will say, if they aren't able to do that, if they get to the postseason and things are going fine, especially if it's a 12-13 win season, and then they can't get it done in the postseason, would you have more questions about Russ or Pete? Because for me, if they get there and they aren't able to have success in the playoffs again, part of me is kind of leaning toward Russ as where my bigger questions are of if he can have postseason success leading this team. That's where I'm leaning.
Okay. I think it's impossible to know that until you watch this season play out and how they go down in the postseason, right? If that's the way that was to go. Let's say they, have a 12, 13 win season. Russ is, one of the top 3 candidates for MVP. They get in the playoffs. They win a game. They go to the second round and they lose 42-38. And, Russ has them in position for a game-winning score, and, a guy just makes a nice play and tips the ball or something, right? And they were an inch away. Or, like when what's his face got stopped on the half yard line we didn't win the division against the Niners.
Yeah.
Right. Like right there, I would have a hard time blaming Russ now. And I'd be more blaming Pete. Now, let's say, they get that 12, 13 wins, but Russ is up and down. We get to the postseason and they play another Eagles type team, right? And put up 17 points and eke out a victory, and then get down 20 points in the next game and, come back and lose by 10. Yeah, now I'm looking at Russ.
Yeah, it does. How the game flow goes, it'll show us more on where the blame is. I guess the point I'm trying to make is that I expected more from Russ down the stretch last season, that he would be able to diagnose it and make the right decisions to have better success down that stretch. I don't think it was necessarily conservatism completely on Pete's side, because I know that Pete and Russ are both tied into the idea of wanting and looking for the big play at all times. I wish Russ was the one a little bit more willing to take the easy gains. There's so many times where I see him pass on those and give those up for trying to look for the big play. And that's why I lean more toward potential criticism of Russ.
Interesting. So if I were to base my opinion on postseason failures of the last few that we've watched, right, I definitely lean more towards Pete. And this last year, it really would make me lean more towards Pete, because I watched, what is this year 9 for Russ? So for 8.5 years of Russell's career, he's been an incredible top tier quarterback. And that first half of that year, he might have been having his best year ever as one of those top tier quarterbacks. And then Pete freaked out and screwed it all up. And he screwed with Russell's head. He got Shoddy all screwed up. He had Russ so scared to pull the trigger on stuff that he just sat and held the ball forever. I don't think it was so much looking for the deep shot. It was more that he was just terrible. Unless it was so 100% wide open, he wouldn't pull the trigger because Pete was having a freak out over turnovers. That's how it felt to me.
If Pete was freaking out about the turnovers, then why aren't you taking more of those safe check down options and moving the ball on offense a little more conservatively?
Well, I'm saying he had him so far in his own head that it locked him up on that stuff.
Yeah, that could be.
Because I refuse to believe the last 8 weeks that we saw of Russ is the new Russ going forward. I have 8.5 years of evidence that say that's not the way he plays, and a half a season saying that's how he plays. And I did watch Pete have a catfish meltdown over 2 games of turnovers.
This is year 10. This is year 10 for Russ.
Year 10? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, there you go. I have 9.5 years of Russ being a baller and half a season of not. And the change was as per Pete's request.
Maybe Shoddy did not have the capability to call plays in the way that met Pete's request too.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Like, Shoddy ended up being the coordinator that I didn't want them to hire. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Like, remember when they hired Shoddy and I was like the third saddest person on the planet?
Oh, yeah. I remember that well, because he was just a dude. You know, and you talk about guys who are just a guy on the field. I feel like he's just a guy as a coordinator
who has no ability to adjust in game.
I will say, though, they had more success with him than I expected.
That's true. And I guess I give that to Russ, that credit.
Making his offensive coordinator look good.
I mean, what is Shoddy and Bevel?
I want to say, don't take my comments about Russ as me being like super critical of him. I think
you hate our quarterback.
I don't hate our quarterback.
No, you're terrible. You're like, what? Is it time for Geno Smith? Is it Geno time, Brandon?
I'm saying I want Russ to ball out in the postseason the way he balls out in the regular season. And I want to see the tempo early on in the game. I want to see it.
Yeah.
Because
Brandon
that's
Schultz,
the type,
Russell Wilson hater.
That's the type of tempo that I want to see in the postseason. And so often, and that is one area where I think Pete is so dang conservative in that he doesn't want to screw things up early on in a postseason game. Where I think that, like, I don't know. I have questions about who's at fault in terms of starting a game quickly on offense. I don't know if Russell Wilson is as strong in the first half as he can be in the second half. And I wonder if that's a mentality thing.
Yeah, see, Brandon Schultz, Russell Wilson hater right there.
There I am.
No,
Here I am, hating on Russell Wilson in our season expectations show.
Yeah, no, I think, but I understand where you're getting at here. And the tempo part of it, I think, is 95% of it. And it has been talked about enough this offseason, and it's been displayed in the preseason that I think Pete has acquiesced on that part of the offense. It may not be a lot more volume passing in terms of run to pass ratio, but I think you're going to see more passing overall because with an up-tempo offense, you're able to stay ahead of the chains a little bit better, and you're just going to end up running more plays.
Well, I am looking forward to the better tempo because I cannot take it when they're running it down to zero, running the play clock down to zero every single time.
If they consistently come out of the stupid huddle with 11 seconds left on the play clock, I will break a TV.
Yeah.
Because that is unbelievably maddening.
It is. And I think it's been good through these first two games. So that's where I do take some positives away. That's one of the things I wanted to see in the preseason, and I saw that, and so I'm satisfied.
Right. Exactly. There's some good stuff from an otherwise lackluster preseason. Hey, but overall, knock on wood, so far, the injuries have been good through the preseason.
A big part of that's been not starting the starters.
I wouldn't be sad if they didn't play the last
It's fine.
preseason.
It's fine. No, they won't. Because Pete said going into the game against the Chargers, it's about the competition. They're looking at the competitive spots.
Okay.
So the guys who are starters are starters.
Gotcha.
As was my takeaway from it anyway.
No, that's a good way to cut through Pete speak. That sounds about right.
I don't know why you're so down on this team, though. Picking them for 12 wins instead of 13 or more.
Well, I mean, while I don't hate our quarterback, I do recognize that there's maybe limitations. And, a fluky game here or there that just doesn't go your way. It's not so much that I hate my quarterback or my team. I have a lot of faith in him. That's why I picked him to go 12-5 and, win a couple playoff games. But, I mean, I didn't want to oversell it either. Guarantee something like, 13 wins and then say the quarterback stinks for half the game.
Half the show. Try
to place a bunch of postseason losses on, the best quarterback in franchise history. Didn't do any of that.
It's definitely either Pete or Russ. It doesn't have anything to do with anybody else on the team or the GM. It's one of those two guys.
Well, the funny part is,
and it's not both. You have to pick one.
Yeah, that's just where I was getting at. It's like, this is how everything is in our culture today, right? It's either this or it's that. It can't possibly be a little column A, a little column B, or mostly column A and a little column B, or whatever. Like, you can't. Nope, it can't be shades of gray. It's got to be black and white. Russell sucks according to Brandon Schultz, and Pete's amazing.
Let's get to the second half of the show.
Okay, hater.
Well, there is credit that you have to give to head coach Pete Carroll, Adam. It's that he knows who his starting quarterback is going to be, and he's not going to make a dumb decision like starting, I don't know, the worst quarterback in the division as your starting quarterback, like Jimmy Garoppolo for the 49ers.
By starting Trey Lance, would the 49ers not have the worst quarterback in the division?
He at least has the potential to not be the worst.
Okay, I would agree with you there, but he would still be the worst quarterback in the division. And you know how I feel about Kyler. Like, it's mainly because he's a rookie.
Where are we going with this?
I don't know. What's Kyle going to do? Like, is that an interesting thing that you've taken from this preseason? Listening to the chatter around the other teams. I mean, we had a good time making fun of the Rams.
Yeah.
In another boneheaded trade. And
they just want to give up all their picks. And the 49ers, though, their defense. See, and that's the thing when you watch the preseason. The 49ers have depth on their defense.
Yeah. They can be a very good defensive football team, but they're going to be a limited offensive team. I mean, I understand Kittle's back and he's a monster. I can't even try. I can trash him being a woo guy, which bothers me, like being a good Luke Wilson, but
it's him and Travis Kelce. They're the two best tight ends in the NFL.
Kittle's a monster, dude. Like he's awesome. But you start looking down the roster from there, and I mean, their most valuable player this year is going to be Mostert.
Yeah.
Because they're going to have to run the holy hell out of the ball to be competitive.
No matter who the quarterback is.
Absolutely. Because I really do not believe in starting running backs as your receivers. I just don't think that that's a good way to go.
The thing that I can't wrap my brain around, though, is if you are frustrated by the turnovers from Handsome Jimmy, and so you go out and draft the third guy overall specifically because he doesn't turn the ball over, and then you decide not to start him, that would be a really odd decision to make.
I don't think so. Look, let's say I woke up tomorrow, Kyle Shanahan. It would clearly be a downgrade, I know, but I would wake up Kyle Shanahan.
Significantly less handsome.
Yes, and I would be the head coach of the Bay Area 49ers. Again, downgrade. I have Jimmy Garoppolo as a quarterback choice, and I made a really genius decision to draft a super raw guy in Trey Lance, hoping that Jimmy is going to be my bridge guy, which he's done. Like his confidence it's over for Jimmy. Like it's done. Like what would I do if I was Kyle? I woke up Kyle Shanahan. I would probably roll Jimmy out there for a game or two. Trey is just so raw. There's no way you can just throw him out there right now without destroying his confidence after you gave up a bunch of draft capital to get a guy that's maybe good. He's super iffy.
It's a tough call. And that's probably, man, in hindsight, I wonder if Kyle's thinking, man, I should have gone with Mac Jones.
Seriously? Look, all right. I'm real happy for Mac. He went to the absolute perfect situation for him.
Sure.
Like that was the only place that he could have some success. But you've watched Mac Jones, right?
Yeah, he looked all right.
I mean, he's got Bradford potential for sure.
Yeah, he does not have the upside that you would. And that's why you go with Lance with the third pick, because of the upside. Yeah, it's just
no. You go with Fields with the third pick.
Yeah. Okay. That's fair.
Yeah. I mean, that's going to be an easy one when it's all said and done. Who is the better one out of Fields and Lance? Like, we're going to know that pretty quick.
I think so.
Yeah, I don't get it. I don't get it, especially giving up what they did. Like, if Trey Lance falls to you, right? Like, cool. Like, that, great. Yeah, I'd take that pick all day.
Man, I can't think of another season where you have 5 quarterbacks who are going to be so interesting to watch through. And really, you could almost even say 6 quarterbacks, because I don't feel like we got enough of Joe Burrow last year to really assess him all that well.
Oh my gosh, who are your 5, by the way?
The Zach Wilson, Trevor, Trey Lance whenever he gets to play, Mac Jones,
Fields,
yeah, and then Burrow would be the 6th.
Burrow. Stafford's going to be fascinating.
Oh no,
Bridgewater's going to be fascinating.
I'm only talking about the young guys who have come out these last 2 years.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I was agreeing with you and like taking it even like a little bit further. This is a really amazing year to watch the quarterback position and to see some things either prove out or don't. Baker's going to be fascinating this year. I mean,
I want to see. I'm looking forward to Lamar this year too, to see how he, responds from last year.
Absolutely. No, it's going to be, it's just a crazy year that way. And it's going to be a lot of fun. I mean, I think we can all agree Kirk Cousins will not be interesting this year.
Well, it could make Kellen Mond interesting.
Maybe.
Hey.
I'm glad they took a flyer on Mond. Like, I liked him okay.
Sure.
Yeah.
Davis Mills might get some playing time down in Houston.
No, he won't. No. Well, he might eat, only because he's in Houston.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
Gosh, I just feel terrible for Texans fans, man. Like, what? Oh,
it would be.
At least we're nowhere even in the zip code of that, right? Like, we complained about stuff about our team today. Like, can you imagine how bad it can be?
Yeah, that's about as bad as it can be.
Oh.
Because not only you have your quarterback go through one of the weirdest offseason stories that I can remember recently with
your former quarterback.
Yeah, former quarterback, right? He's still on the team.
Nope, he's not.
And then they get rid of JJ Watt, who is, the guy that you've been able to root for forever on the team.
And Bill O'Brien trades away every decent asset you've ever had, then gets canned.
And now your best players are David Johnson and Whitney Merciless.
Who?
Yeah.
Oh, just brutal, man.
Did they bring in Mark Ingram?
Oh, I don't know. That'd have been an interesting signing.
Yeah, he's with the Texans. The Texans brought him on.
Wow. They better have given him a lot of money. He's used to winning.
That's true. Yeah, between the Saints and Ravens.
Yeah.
That's a guy I would have liked to see on the Seahawks.
Big time, dude. I love the way that he runs with football.
A little bit too late now, I suppose.
I heard that many of the Texans players are open for a trade. You can call them up.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, we don't have Bill O'Brien there anymore. We can't be like, yeah, so we were kind of hoping for Ingram and Merciless.
Well, we got future Hall of Famer John Reed for a conditional 7th. So I don't think much has changed.
Yeah, it has changed because we could have gotten both Ingram and Merciless probably for some extra player towels, right? The towels they wear on the side of their unis.
And we got this guy Lundblade at center. I think you guys would be, we have this stellar center competition, and there's probably not going to be a spot for Lundblade. So, there's your future Hall of Fame center.
Absolutely. Yeah.
What do you say we welcome some new members of the flock?
Yeah, that'd be good.
All right.
I'm ready.
Start off by thanking executive producers DCH, Dustin Mock, Brian Shaw, Kevin Watterson, and Jake Burdine. Also, a thank you to executive producers Christopher Hart, Glenn Travis, who came in with the annual donation last show, Dan Nicholson, and Johanna Herbst. Putting them in the executive producer category here for the rest of the month here. And we got some new members, too.
That's fantastic. I mean, it is fun this time of year because the numbers do swell. Everybody gets excited. They're ready for the new season. I can't wait.
Leon Rafleur comes in with his annual donation, says Jamal got paid, so it's time for my little yearly contribution to the show. Anyway, Tom Brady sucks and go Hawks. And Leon, $25 is not a little contribution. That is a welcome annual contribution.
Heck yeah, man. No, that's a in Pete speak, that is a legit contribution.
Legit donation by Leon.
Yeah.
Sean Snyder came in at $12.12 a month, says, I finally decided to stop being a freeloader. I can't believe I didn't make your pantheon of Seans. Keep up the good work, from Sean. You know what? We need to start a new Mount Rushmore of Seans just for this show. And I say we put Sean up there as number one in position, in the George Washington position.
He's definitely maybe the Sean I've known the longest. Like, because when you first said Sean Snyder, I mean, this is Sean Snyder from high school, yeah? Yeah, that's really cool. Number one, what's up, Sean? It's been a minute. Yeah, and I'm glad that, he ponied up and stopped being a freeloader. Yeah, for Ring of Honor level donation. Right now, well, okay, so Mount Rushmore has, 4 dudes, right?
Right.
Yeah.
I don't know why you have to say that with a question mark behind it. Yeah, Mount Rushmore has 4 dudes. Because I had to count them in my
head and picture it. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Anyways, how many Seans are on our Mount Rushmore Seans? Doesn't have to be 4, right? It's our own mount.
It is, but we only have one Sean as the member of the flock, and so he gets position number 1.
Okay, well, that's what I was getting at. It's like I thought maybe I put him at 5, just in case there was some other, Seans out there that we all agree, their greatness. I mean, I'm not saying Sean Snyder isn't great, because he is.
George Washington isn't the greatest president just because he was first.
Are we sure?
Abe Lincoln, a guy to his left, would probably have a little something to say about it.
Who would win in a fight, George Washington or Abe Lincoln?
I mean, you know.
I don't know. Abe's good with an axe.
I thought George was good with the axe.
That's a fable. He never chopped down a cherry tree. But Abe Lincoln has a famous quote about chopping wood that it's really great because it warms you twice. Once when you're chopping the wood and once when you burn it.
Oh.
Yeah. He grew up in a log cabin, the Abe.
Didn't both of them?
I know. I don't know. I don't know what George was doing.
They both had to chop wood, I think, in that time period.
That's true. Okay. So maybe their axe skills are...
neck and neck.
Neck and neck. But, okay. So as a military commander, George would definitely be the guy you pick. But like in a fisticuffs kind of situation.
Yeah, I'd take George.
Take George. What about TJ? Old Thomas Jefferson.
I'd go TJ.
You go TJ over George?
Yeah.
I don't think so, man.
I think George based on strength, but I think TJ based on wits.
Okay. What about Teddy? So he's carrying a big stick.
Yeah. He's got a good balance of both.
He was a Rough Rider.
Yeah.
Yeah. My money might be on Teddy.
This is a March Madness situation.
Okay, this is good. See, this is going to be a good topic for next show for everybody to chime in on. Which of our presidents would you take in an Anchorman style fight? That's my question for everything in the world. I love putting everything through the lens of an Anchorman style fight. Yeah.
Well, I think we have the final 4.
Well, we all know Grover Cleveland's out.
Taft is out.
Yeah.
I think any of the contemporaries, really. Who is the most recent president that you would even want to consider?
I take Gerald Ford. He's a hell of an athlete.
He's the most recent, though.
Because Eisenhower would be my next guy. Maybe JFK just because he's young. He was in the Navy.
Yeah.
He was an ass kicker.
I don't know about that, but yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe based on youth. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we're definitely not taking Jimmy Carter.
No. Reagan was old.
No. Yeah, Reagan was old.
HW didn't seem like a fighter.
He was tough. But I think, by the time he was president, I don't know.
I just don't see... Ford is the closest guy for me.
Because Joe, definitely not. Like, Trump, definitely not.
No.
I mean, Obama was pretty young as a president.
Yeah, youth does not win you.
That's just some physical upside,
Yeah.
Yeah, but he's not. I don't think he's a.
I would rank JFK. I would probably rank JFK up there over him.
Over Obama? Oh yeah, easily. It wouldn't even be close.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fun. All right, get on it, people.
All from Sean mentioning this Mount Rushmore thing. Okay.
Oh, dude. How did I not mention Andrew Jackson?
I don't know.
He was a tough mother.
Catfish!
Okay.
Yeah.
It wasn't one that came to mind to me.
Okay. I'm just saying.
Yeah. Who did we miss in terms of tough presidents?
I love the second half of the show.
Welcome to the flock to Joseph Bertles, who came in at $5 a month.
Oh, yeah. Joseph, I'm telling you, I think Joseph would be a George guy.
Washington.
He's all in on George. Yeah.
Yeah. Alex Patton gave us a raise, 3 to 5. So thanks to Alex.
Oh, yeah. Appreciate that, Alex. Well, being a Patton, don't you think that he would vote for the commander-in-chief when George Patton was a general?
Or Eisenhower?
FDR? Yeah. Eisenhower was a general.
Right.
At that point. Yeah. FDR was the president.
I'm just saying, but would you go with a president who had that military general experience?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'd throw Ike in there.
I think so, too.
Yeah. Definitely not Nixon, though.
No.
Lyndon B?
He's probably a dark horse candidate, right?
He is a dark horse candidate. He's a mean son of a bitch.
You're going to make me want to...
I'm really proud, too, that I've done all this off the top of my head.
I know that you had me thinking, do I need to go to the list of presidents now to really hash this out? But no, we will rely.
You know, Grant would fight dirty. He was as corrupt as all hell. Garfield died in a bathtub, I think. Doesn't that happen to him?
I'm reaching the my limits of presidential knowledge here.
Okay. Harry Truman was a nerd. Like, there's no way.
You're just going based off of pictures now.
No, Harry Truman was a nerd. You've heard him talk. None of the Adams, they were windbags.
Oh, for sure. I didn't even think that was worth mentioning.
Mm-mm.
Leland Hawks came in at $12.12 a month. I could have sworn that Leland is coming back, but I could be wrong about that. So I will say welcome to the flock to Leland. I thought Leland's been here.
I would be stunned if you told me he wasn't. Leland's been, yeah.
Okay.
He's been in the, I think he's just re-upping.
I'm looking at the lifetime, and so maybe you used a different email, and so.
Okay. Yeah, I was going to say, Leland's been with the group for a while. Yeah.
Jared came in, Jared Johnson, with a $12.12 donation via PayPal. So a big thanks and welcome to the flock to Jared.
All right. So I want to know if I like this Jared or not. What is the first letter of his first name?
J, as it should be.
All right. He's an awesome Jared.
Only one R, not trying to get fancy with the multiple R's.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, the only other Jared in my life spells it all goofed up.
I know.
The G and 2 R's. It's ridiculous.
So yes, thanks to Jared. And thanks to Chad for emailing in. Says, it's not like us flockers get too worried about preseason games, but with a 17-game season this year, you know a lot of our backups will need to see some playing time. And that is appearing to be a pretty big concern. Ignoring the fact that our starting cornerbacks are just turnstiles for opposing wide receivers, I worry about our player development in the back half of our roster. Could it be that we have spent so much money on our top 3 to 5 players that our coffers are empty for everyone else? Can't wait to see our starters. Go Hawks.
Go Hawks, Chad. Yeah, I mean, he's right on the same page as a lot of the things we were talking about earlier in the pod, right? I mean, it's hard to watch this last, couple preseason games and not feel like a twinge of concern.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
It's there.
I mean, I don't know about you guys, but I definitely go to bed every night, like just being like, preseason doesn't matter. Preseason doesn't matter. Preseason doesn't matter. Just go to sleep. Preseason.
Yes, I've had to tell myself the same thing, that preseason doesn't matter. But Chad has a point that there is some concern when it comes to different positions when you're talking about depth and how that depth is challenged in the regular season. Other teams are going to have to deal with it too. And there may be some teams that are better equipped at certain spots. But and that's why we had such a hard time with the predictions. I mean, I could have gone 10-7. I could have gone 11-6 with those types of concerns.
Oh, yeah.
I'm choosing to be optimistic because I like our quarterback and our head coach, unlike my co-host.
You like your head coach. But yeah, it's really tough. The injury luck part of things. I mean, in our predictions every year, you got to try to factor that in. And there's really just not a good way to predict that, right?
No, because injuries can happen
other
anytime.
than-
And so to factor in catastrophic injuries,
Yeah.
it's not something you can really account for.
Nope. So you just got to, do your best otherwise. But yeah, the extra game this season, I think that's an excellent point. It does put a little bit more emphasis on depth.
It definitely puts an emphasis on depth. I want to put the emphasis on thanking our flockers this week, especially those of you who are coming in at 12 and above every single month. So we're going to thank all of you at the end of the show. If you want to be a member of the flock, getintheflock.com. If you go there now, you can see I posted the video of the Kenny Easley and Steve Largent autographed helmet, the full-size helmet that's going to be part of our Pick'em League. And a reminder, get in the Pick'em League, Seahawkerspodcast.com/Pick'em-League. It will take you to the sign-up page, and that is all set and ready to go. So you can make your picks. And I think we've talked about the rules this year being a little bit different in that you're going to have to put in the total score, the total points scored in the Monday night game. That's going to be the tiebreaker this year. And so, yeah, you won't have to worry about when you get your picks in or changing your picks if something happens during the week. And that's how we're going to roll this year.
Perfect. No, that sounds good. And I think we're going to be going over some Pick'em League team names in the next show or two.
Yes.
Like just before the season starts.
I've seen some good ones, especially Dan's in the Ring of Honor.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. Came up with a solid one.
Okay.
I'll save it. It's a little tease for the next show.
Oh, all right.
But it's a throwback to something we discussed in the previous show. So if you haven't listened to that, you'll want to go back, listen to that show, listen to this show, and the next show. Just tune in to all the shows that we do, and you won't miss anything.
Mm-hmm. Right. Can I guess what it has to do with from the last show?
Sure.
Yeah.
Catfish!
Yes. His team
Yes.
may have that as one of the names.
Sweet. I think
Catfish!
centric names are pretty great for the Pick'em League. I like it.
They can be.
Yeah.
Could make it a challenge for me editing, but yeah.
Yeah, I know. Oh, I guess I did listen to the end of the show from last week and how that went down.
There wasn't as many as I had to edit out as I initially thought, because anytime we were speaking of the last name, I felt as though I could leave it in. And whereas if you're using the alternative form, then I had to catfish it. So
I only spoke about the name.
that's what I felt like. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a family show. I know that.
The other thing I want to get into on the next show before the season starts, we had Ryan come in, David, Clint, William, and Tigerhawk, all with ideas on how to get football during the regular season. And so I'm going to bring all that to the show next week.
Awesome. No, that's great, because there's a real struggle somehow to just be able to watch your team, and any suggestions are very much appreciated.
Yes, and they all range in different technological expertise. Like, because you just want to be able to sign in and watch Game Pass in some cases. Like, it shouldn't be that hard, but in some cases it is hard.
Right.
Oh, speaking of which, you were going to, for those of you who aren't in the flock, we are, a cool thing we've been doing, we've been giving away preseason tickets. We gave away tickets to the Broncos game. We're giving away tickets to the Chargers game as soon as you and I finish up here, Adam. I'm picking someone to take our seats for the Chargers game. And then we are going to have a Game Pass code to give away. And that is thanks to Young Choi. And so that's coming up. So if you're not a member of the flock, these are some of the bonuses you're missing out on, because I'm going to give away that code here in the next week or so.
Oh, awesome, man. No, that's an exciting opportunity. And yeah, like you said, that's the stuff you miss out on.
And it just shows up right in your email when we have those opportunities.
Yeah, for sure.
One last thing before we get to do better and better at life. Matt in Denver comes in. The way you say Bay Area does a sufficient job in mocking the smug
Catfish!
faces that live there.
Yes.
But it's a truly missed opportunity to not call it the Bay Area, pronounced like diarrhea with a B.
Oh, there's a extra creativity to that I will give him. I think, and I like that, but I think it's harder to do with the appropriate amount of disdain in your voice.
Yeah. It's
and I have the added bonus is that it pisses Brittany off every time that I do it, since she had lived in that area for.
She was East Bay though. I feel like that doesn't even count.
Yeah, it all counts.
I know a lot of good people down there. Dang it.
Yeah, I know. People get stuck in all sorts of places. That's not, it's not always their fault. I'm just saying the population in general, they act like they're from Bay area.
It is hard to say.
Yeah, I had to try it on.
It was worth a shot. It failed.
Yeah, it did. Well, I'm just not as talented.
I'm to do better and better at life.
My do better this week. This is just to point out a little bit of why we're so annoyed with media as a whole. And it's not sports related, and it is COVID related, but I don't think this is controversial at all. I read this headline and then read a little bit going down the article, and it set my hair on fire.
Okay.
The title, Wildfire Smoke Linked to Thousands of Coronavirus Cases on West Coast.
Yes.
This came from the Bay Area newspaper, the San Francisco Chronicle. So they say that there is a study that came out from a journal called Science Advances that offers some perspective on the idea that coronavirus cases has spiked along with wildfire smoke. And they're like, oh yeah, when the fire started, corona cases went up at the same time. And, this wildfire smoke, it's driving all this COVID. Like, that's what it's doing. Could possibly be that, like, I don't know, Delta variant came around and happened to be when fires are going on. No, they link this together and try to paint this picture that wildfires are responsible for increasing the rate of coronavirus infections.
Uh-huh.
It's so catfishing absurd. And then but the best part is you get about 6 paragraphs down and they finally get to the point of this because they offer no proof whatsoever throughout the article. None.
Yeah.
They're just like, oh yeah, corona's going up and fires have gotten bad. They finally admit about 6 paragraphs down. Well, a correlation between wildfire smoke and COVID-19 doesn't prove causation. The study's authors say the tie is no coincidence. No, guess what? Correlation does not prove causation. This is what science is all about. You say you got this from a science journal, and then you publish it in your trash newspaper and try to make people think that wildfires are spreading coronavirus. It's one of the dumbest catfishing things I've ever heard. So the San Francisco Chronicle and Curtis Alexander, who wrote this stupid ass article, do better.
It couldn't possibly be that during fire season that people are spending more times indoors and coronavirus just happens to spread more easily when you're next to people indoors. That'd be weird if it was more due to the fact that people are actually indoors more during the summer than being outdoors.
I have a couple questions here, right? Like, number one, is it really hard to get coronavirus outside?
It's hard. Yeah, it's harder. Yeah.
It's really hard. If you get infected while you're outdoors, you're like one of the best people in the world at getting coronavirus. Like, you're really good at it. It's very rare. And then on top of all that, in the history of man, how many plagues have been spread around the earth via wildfire smoke?
Yeah, I'd say 0.
Catfish 0. That's why this is so dumb. Like, and they just gin up this extra fear that, oh geez, well, we're all going to get sick from the corona because the fires are bad now. Just stupid, man. Stuff makes me angry.
Yeah, that was a weird
Good luck. And the thing is the bummer about it is all of us regular people, we all get to sit and try to figure out what's true and what's not. Like, we got to be the expert. Like, it's so ridiculous that we have to go through these hoops. And this was just a great example of that stupidity.
I remember seeing that, but I kind of blew it off like, oh, that's dumb. And so that's as far as I got with it.
Okay, well, so that's what I was going to do. And then I started reading through it. And when they got to because I had the phrase in my head, correlation does not prove causation. Like I had that going through my head.
Yeah.
And then because I was like, that's what this whole thing is.
Yeah, there's 100%
and then they
correlation.
Admit it. Yeah, they finally admit it like 6 paragraphs down. Like, well, even though we just said all that stuff, like it doesn't prove anything. So it's stupid with a capital stupid.
Well, my do better this week. It's time for kids going back to school. Walking around my kids' middle school this week. And I saw a quote up on the wall in the school. Yeah, they have the inspirational quotes. This one jumped out at me. It said, if you know you can do better, then do better. Where are the English teachers at this school? Why do you have to use 10 words to say something that only takes 2? And we've been doing it for nearly 350 episodes. Cut all the crap. If you know you can do better, then do better. It only takes 2 words. Do better.
Do better. Yeah. That was some academic speak for something that should be pretty simple, right?
Yeah.
You should pull your kids out of that school.
I should. Because of the sign. If you don't fix it, like I know you're trying to fill space, just do a large do and a large better. That's all you need.
Exactly. It with a finger pointing right at you in like a shameful point. Like to make you feel a little guilt and shame.
I don't think it has to be that way.
Kids need that, Brandon. The kids need that. You should be like that dude from Utah we talked about last week and write a strongly worded letter and threaten to boycott and whatever else.
What I should have done is just take
and yell at the school. This is not a communist school.
I should have just taken down all the unneeded words off of the board.
Yeah. You could have just got out a big marker and just started crossing stuff out.
Could.
Or you should have edited it like a teacher would a paper with a big red marker and then put like D- like at the bottom.
What is it? What do they call it when the teacher, like when you're supposed to do a 2-page essay and then you change the margins so there's like 4 inches on either side and then you use 25-point font.
And it is 1.5 space spacing,
right?
Rather than single space. Yeah. You know what you call that? Genius.
How Adam got through high school?
Yeah. No doubt about it. They don't appreciate brevity,
On to Better at Life. My Better at Life this week is for our Seattle Seahawks organization for finally getting around to inducting a couple more legends from the Holmgren era Seahawks into the Ring of Honor. We got the announcement this week that Matt Hasselbeck and the man himself, when you talk about the Holmgren era, Mike Holmgren, he's going into the Ring of Honor too. It's about dang time. But for the Seahawks, finally announcing it, it's going to be happening in October. Better at Life than Skip Bayless.
Yeah, big show in Matt. Like that, it was time. No doubt about it. Long overdue. I'm excited for that. Is that a backhanded shot by the Seahawks to Sean Alexander?
Yeah, like why don't you put in your MVP, like your one NFL MVP that you've had on the team over the years?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if I'd like that. What about Marcus Trufant? Max Strong?
Ooh. Yeah, they're really, really good. Seahawks was some of my favorites, no doubt about it, but I don't think they're Ring of Honor guys. Close. Real close.
If you had to pick one between Sean, Mac, and Marcus, if you could only pick one to go in.
Max Strong, it's easy. Because I've gotten I once had the opportunity to speak to Max Strong and be like, hey, when you were born and they named you Mac, did you have any other option but to play fullback? And he laughed, which made me happy. He laughed at one of my jokes.
So he gets in.
And I love the way that he played. So Max Strong.
And then you put in Joe Nash because it's long overdue.
Oh, God, yeah. Yeah. He's the best. He is easily the best Seahawk Tecmo Bowl player of all time.
Easy. It's not even close.
No.
But I mean, he's also... I'm just saying you don't put him in based on his Tecmo Bowl prowess alone.
Oh, no. That's like the cherry on top.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Who you got for Better at Life?
All right, man. My Better at Life than Skip Bayless this week. As far as our embattled quarterback, Russell Carrington Wilson, He's still my favorite quarterback, despite my co-host hating him and telling us that he is terrible for half of the season and half of games and all of the postseason. He's the man. Russell Carrington Wilson winning another chip this year. Better at life than Skip Bayless.
You know what I think got to me this week was the SB Nation, the national guys, reminding me about the Russell Wilson bread spokesperson thing. And even though that's something that we talked about years ago, I guess that just it hit me this week. And so just all that negativity, it brought it over to me, and I apologize.
Okay. I think you know what you have to do between now and the next show, right? You need to cleanse your Hawker.
I do. And I'm going to start by thanking all of our members of the flock at $12 and above.
Keith Ketover, a.k.a. Flocktimus Prime, University of Cybertron, Little Flockers, roll out.
DCH from Sparks, Nevada, the University of Montana Grizzlies.
Annalisa Mickelson, a.k.a. Mrs. Doug Baldwin, New York, undergrad, University of North Carolina, Greensboro, graduate school, Brooklyn College.
Eric Trench, rooting for the Seahawks out of Renton, Washington, graduated from Eastern Washington University.
Jameson Holman from Murray, Utah, representing Mississippi State University. Hail State and go Hawks.
Gary Blum from Chappaqua, New York, and the University of Pennsylvania, your 2016 Pick'em League champion.
Ron Pepper, UNLV Runnin' Rebels, San Francisco, California.
Hong Kong! Hong Kong! Hong Kong!
Ella Esparza, Woodway, Texas, Yale University, and Sam Houston State, Eat 'em Up Cats.
Lisa in Seattle.
Kevin Stengen, Keene, Texas.
Vincent Parker, Emily Carr, University of Art Design, RN Collective.
Samuel Gelber, NoHo, California.
David Van Cleve, Camas, Washington, home of the Papermakers.
Leo Jose, Luleå, Sweden, from Luleå Eskimos and Rennes-Colmar, France.
Paul from San Diego.
Aaron Fisher, a.k.a. Lock It and Put It in Your Pocket, Las Vegas, Nevada.
Hey Seahawkers, my name is Daryl Taylor. I live in one of the most beautiful places in the world, North Idaho. Hashtag on the roads. Go Hawks.
And now we go to our list of $12 supporters and above, and we're starting with Christina in Manassas, Virginia, Brian in Texas, Ross in Eureka, California, Roe in Federal Way, Craig in Camas, Sven in Berlin, Deutschland, James in Linwood, Jared in Missoula, Hector in Issaquah, Becca in Manhattan Beach, Young in Anchorage, Tim in Austin, Jonathan in Ridgefield, Christian in Oslo, Norway, Kathy in Eureka, California, Joshua in Seven Oaks, England, Brandon in Huntersville, North Carolina, Jeremy in Garabo, Puerto Rico, JC in Horsford, England, Keegan in Colorado Springs, Chris in Spokane, Glenn in Ocoee, Florida, James in Beau Arts, Jake in Seattle, Jeffrey in Kansas City, Kari in Rochester, Brian in Berlin, Connecticut, Mitchell in El Dorado Hills, California, Connie in Gothenburg, Sweden, Taylor in South Cleellum, Tracy in Kaneohe, Hawaii, Eric in Seattle, Marvin in Riverdale, Utah, Dean in the Greater Hawkdom, Kevin in Surrey, BC, Crystal in Oldsmar, Florida, John C. in the Greater Hawkdom, John W. in New York, Shoko in New York, Scott in Bakersfield, Patrick in Sacramento, Bryson in Eltopia, Greg in Seattle, Jeremy in Federal Way, Ben in Wrexham, Wales, Joshua in Candor, New York, Kenneth in Hutto, Texas, Mark in Bexley Heath, England, Mario in Seattle, Jay in Monroe, Cora in Ditters, Deutschland, Anders in Vila, Denmark, Warren in Dundee, Oregon, Jack in Somersham, England, Chris in Austin, Preston in Phoenix, Amy in Squim, Marcus in Potts Point, Australia, Ivy in Renton, Richard in Killeen, Texas, Joseph in Vancouver, Kevin in Great Glen, England, Corey in Vancouver, Taylor in Spokane, Kyle in the Greater Hawkdom, Ryan in Salt Lake City, Joshua in the Greater Hawkdom, Kevin in the Greater Hawkdom, Dan in the Greater Hawkdom, JC in University Place, Jason in Panama City, Florida, Chris in Billings, Montana, DJ in Menifee, California, Marlon in the Greater Hawkdom, Norma in the Greater Hawkdom, John H. in Honolulu, Chad in Lexington Park, Maryland, Bridget in Redmond, Ryan in Crestview, Florida, Hannah in Chesterfield, Jalen in Minneapolis, Terrence in Seattle, Eugene in Henderson, Nevada, Tucker in Camas, Daniel in Post Falls, Idaho, Jamie in Oswestry, England, John F. in Toano, Virginia, Mike in the Greater Hawkdom, Ian in Seattle, Eric in Kalispell, Kayla in Vancouver, Tanner in Kalispell, Terrell in Atlanta, Ryan in Fairbanks, Alaska, Nathan in Solna, Sweden, Matt in the Greater Hawkdom, Devontae in Boise, Idaho, CJ in David City, Nebraska, Leland in South Jordan, Utah, and Sean in Cascade, Iowa via Kalispell. Really appreciate all of you. Sean, it's great to have you on board. Again, thanks to everyone supporting at $12 and above. All right, hopefully that gets me started on my Hawker cleanse. What else do I need to do? Let me know.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll figure it out for you. And if you don't come through and you don't cleanse your Hawker the correct way, all those people you just listed, I know who to contact now to get you lined out.
Yeah.
Like those are the folks that will know what to do.
It's a lot of people making that decision.
Yeah. Strength in numbers, dude. Duh.
And with that,
there's only one thing left to say.
Go Hawks.
Go Hawks.